Yeah.
And I know you talk about a little bit about some of the things that, which I love about you, mind you, the fact that if you have followed Matt's journey or you followed him on Instagram or you've known him throughout the years, there's one thing you got to know about Matt, and he is so committed to sharing his process and his journey from such a human level and sharing what he's going through as he's going through it and the cruxes and things that he's developed, which I love, because a lot of coaches and everything try to put themselves on this above human sort of pedestal, right?
Exactly.
For I don't know if they think it's more for respect or it's better for business.
Yeah.
But I love the fact that the people around you can get a sense for, well, he's actually doing the work. Mm-hmm. He's in and amongst it. And I kind of have this saying, like, you're only as sick as your secrets.
Yeah, I love that.
Right?
I've never heard that before.
You haven't?
Did you just make that up?
No, I've read it.
I'm going to steal it, put it on my Twitter and just say I created it, post it on my Instagram. This is my quote, guys.
Then I'm going to create a whole podcast basically going back on everything I said about you. Yeah, Matt Cama is a fraud. But I love that, and I've loved watching that. Like, even though over the years, sometimes, like, occasionally, like, you'll trigger the shit out of me. Yeah. Obviously, don't write anything back.
Vegan stuff.
Yeah. maybe a little bit of some of your activism stuff. Yeah. At some times. Yeah. Not necessarily the things that you care about, but sometimes the methodology kind of triggered me. We've spoken a little bit about that before. Yeah. But I do love, and guys, go and follow Matt and watch his process and journey, because he does really show you the process as it's happening for him. And I know for me, I've spoken a little bit about my sort of like, my sexual impulses over the time, like borderline sexual addictions at some point, where that was really kind of giving me a false pseudo sense of self-worth in a sort of sense. This is a difficult thing with a lot of cruxes, right? Some are easy to kind of keep in the shadows, and some are really, you can't. And that's the trouble with a lot of people within when it manifests through the way that they their relationship with food or exercise. Exactly. Is the fact that it's so relentless, and it's always in your face, and it's always reminding you. And I honestly believe that a lot, like most people, really, they don't hate their bodies. They don't hate their bodies. They have a wound or something that's happened in the past, which has led to a certain behavior or a certain crush, which is now manifested in that way. Yes. Right. And seeing that every day is an unconscious reminder of not being happy with the habits. And the reason I'm not happy with the habits is because the habits reflect what I'm trying to compensate for what happened back here. Exactly. So when we just look at people and go, you're just lazy, or you're just this, or you just, you don't care about it. It's not as simple as that. Yeah. And the reason I know that is because mine have shown up in other ways. And if I'm really honest with myself, they're just as difficult, but I get to then be all noble and righteous because they're not in the limelight and they're not in the forefront. They're over here, and maybe they're more socially acceptable. I'm a young man. I'm, no. It's like, oh, you can go and have sexual relationships with a bunch of people. Oh, Paul, it's like, but yeah, it's manifested and shown up in another way. It just so happens it hasn't shown up in that way. Exactly. And I've still got my battles elsewhere, and it allows me to not be righteous in the sense of when we're working with people with their health and wellness, is I understand that, like, yeah, I've got my grip maybe in this way, doesn't mean I've got a grip across the board. Yeah. And you've openly spoken about your stuff in the past, right? For sure. Yeah. And I love that. I love what you said, where even though you can't relate to the exact thing that other people go through, and that's a big thing with empathy. And I learned this from, I don't know what her name was. It was a spiritual teacher that I was listening to. It was at this seminar, and she basically said the easiest way to gain empathy with others is if you can't relate to the same event or behavior, you can relate to the emotion. So we might not be able to relate to someone being addicted to some type of drug, but we can maybe look at, oh wait, I'm not taking that drug, but I can relate to feeling pain and then turning to this other thing that I'm addicted to, this other behavior. So I might not be able to relate to that, but I can relate to the emotion. So that can be very easy for empathy. And I love that you said that, what was that quote with the shadow thing? You're only as sick as your secrets. You're only as sick as your secrets. That's been my biggest thing, that I feel so energetically clear, because I can't think of one thing right now that I've done in the past that I've had guilt and shame around that I haven't spoken out loud. Every single thing that I can think of right now, maybe there's something else, but right now, what I'm aware of,
I've put it out on social media, or I've said it to a friend, or I've said it to a therapist, or I've said it to a coach, and I've just put it all out there. And it just makes me feel so emotionally clear and energetically clear. Free, right? And it's a big part of shadow work. Like shadow work are those things that all the behaviors, the thoughts and emotions that we put into the shadow, we put under the rug, we put into the closet because we feel like people are going to judge us for that, or we're not going to be loved, or whatever it might be. So with shadow work, the easiest way to do that is bring light to it. You bring light to a shadow, it dissipates, right? And the way that we can do that is just by sharing it out loud. So for me, something that I've been very, very open with is in the past, being super addicted to pornography, and how it was just so, there was no control, and how much it damaged relationships and my own body image as well. So one thing that I've shared in the past as well is that in terms of guilt and shame being more about a belief about who I am, guilt is more about like something that I've done.
Behavior. I wasn't happy about, I'm not impressed about that behavior.
Exactly.
Shame is like, I'm bad. That behavior was bad, but shame is I'm bad.
Yes. And one thing for me that I held a lot of shame around in the past was how much, because from 13 or 12 years old, like watching porn, to all the way to 8 months ago when I really started to focus on getting help with this, how many years is that? That's like that's a lot of years of conditioning, of seeing, okay, this is what sex is. This is how your body parts are supposed to look. There was no sexual education in school. Like, this is the body part. This is what it's supposed to look like. I had no idea. And I had a call with my deep end clients 2 weeks ago about shadow work. And I shared this with them. And I said, one of my biggest insecurities was I didn't know, like, what is the average size of a dick? Like, what is it supposed to look like? For me, all I saw was in porn, like these fucking massive dicks, right?
Yeah.
And then massive, right?
Ridiculous.
And then me also hearing like all black people are supposed to look like this. Like there is this, what's that word? It's like, there's a word that I'm looking for. It's like this type of culture. There's like a belief it's like there's a belief around Chinese people can't drive, or Asians can't drive. Stereotype, that's the word I'm looking for. So that's like the stereotype. If you're black, then that must mean that you have like this big dick, right? And then I'm looking at these pornography videos, me looking at myself in the mirror, I'm like, this doesn't match up. I don't have like that. So then every single time that I'd have a sexual interaction with someone, as soon as the pants come off, I felt like this massive amount of shame, like so damn much. And it wasn't until I started to speak it out loud and I started to just work through it and even just being able to speak about this, there's no nerves. I can just speak about it. There's no energetic or emotional charge around it, because it's like, it's just a body. It's just skin. There's no difference between that, my ears, my nose. It's just like just releasing that shame around that. So being able to speak that out loud to clients, I've said it on podcasts before, and just how much porn has affected me in an unhealthy way in my mind, and also really, really struggling with erectile dysfunction in the past, like how at 19 years old or 20 years old, like that was a big challenge. And I started to realize, like, shit, I got to get help with this. This is a compulsive behavior that I just feel like it's birthing out of pain. It's ending in pain. I can see how it's not serving me, but I still turn to it. Like, what the fuck is going on, right?